The Juggernaut Index is Yahoo's annual ranking of NFL teams for fantasy purposes. Repeat, for fantasy purposes. This is not an NFL power ranking. They're not predicting wins and losses here. In fact, they don't care about such things. Instead, they're reviewing each team's projected fantasy contributions. That's it. This episode is about the team ranked 32nd in the Juggernaut Index, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Last year, Tampa Bay finished 30th in the NFL in points per game with 15.3 and 28th in total yards with 287.5 yards per game. The Bucs lost their most talented wide receiver to Cincinnati via free agency in Antonio Bryant. Then used 6 of their 9 draft picks on defensive players and another on a punter. It's entirely possible that Raheem Morris' squad will improve in his second season as head coach, but the offense isn't going to lead the way. Tampa Bay offers remarkably little to the fantasy community. In the preliminary 2010 Yahoo Power Ranks, only one member of the Bucs placed as a recommended starter in a standard 12-team league. Kellen Winslow is 9th on their preseason draft board at tight end, despite the fact that he has had yet another surgical procedure on his right knee this offseason. Reportedly minor, but this is his 5th knee surgery. None of Tampa Bay's other skilled players are threatening to open the season as fantasy starters. Now, in the current rankings, this team doesn't have a top 25 quarterback, a top 35 running back, or a top 50 wide receiver. Asterisk. It's not exactly a loaded roster. Okay, sure, rookie wide receiver Aurelius Ben is technically 47th at his position in the composite ranks, but that's entirely due to the Brad Evans bump. Evans rated Ben as his number 35 wide receiver, and both the ranker and the rank E attended the University of Illinois. If you disregard this outlier, Ben falls to 56th. Evans really should have recused himself. Josh Freeman, the quarterback for the squad, is entering his second season, and he has showed a great deal of promise as a rookie. He has ideal size at 6'6", 248, a strong arm, and there's no question whatsoever about his athleticism. Freeman led the Bucs to all 3 of their wins, including stunners over the Packers and the Saints, but he was also painfully erratic in his first NFL campaign. He completed just 54.6% of his passes and threw 18 interceptions in just 9 starts. You should have Freeman on your fantasy radar in dynasty leagues and 2 quarterback formats, but elsewhere, he's strictly a bye-week placeholder. We'd all feel much better about Freeman if his receiver core wasn't so ordinary. There's a legitimate chance that a pair of rookies, Aurelius Ben and Mike Williams, a 4th rounder, will actually open the season as starters for the Bucs. With Bryant gone, there's no number 1. Instead, the depth chart is full of number 3s. None of Tampa Bay's returning wide receivers, had a 100-yard receiving game last season. Sammy Stroughter led all returnees in receptions with 31, and Maurice Stovall led in yardage with 366 yards. And Michael Clayton had the best single-game performance, 5 receptions for 93 yards. In Week 1, the Bucs' biggest off-season add at the position other than the rookies was Reggie Brown, a multi-year fantasy disappointment. If you absolutely had to draft a Tampa receiver, which would be the worst rule in fantasy history, but let's just say, then right now, Mike Williams might be the guy. He's earned rave reviews thus far, although you should never take off-season no-pads hype seriously, and he's reportedly ahead of the talented Ben at the moment. Tampa Bay's offensive line is a legitimate strength, and they deserve much of the credit for the team's surprisingly not terrible rushing performance in 2009, 4 yards per carry and 101.6 yards per game. But none of the members of the Bucs' backfield are big play threats. In fact, none of them are even medium play threats. Carnell Williams figures to again lead the team in yards and carries, assuming his rebuilt knees hold up. Cadillac's return to relevance through following career-threatening injuries has been impressive, but that's no reason to nudge him up in your pre-draft ranks. Derek Ward will be in the rotation as well, perhaps for as many as 170 touches, and Ernest Graham will make a cameo appearance. But none of these players are ideal fantasy starters, not in this low-yield offense. Williams is a depth player in most fantasy leagues, and Ward is a late, low-upside flyer in most formats. The Buccaneers allowed 25 points per game last season and were dead last in the NFL in stopping the run, with 158.2 yards per game allowed. So the team used its first 2 picks on defensive tackles, Gerald McCoy at number 3 overall and Bryant Price at number 35. That pair should solidify the interior. McCoy will be a difference maker immediately, although D tackles aren't generally useful as IDPs in fantasy leagues. Styles G. White led the Packs in sacks last season with 6.5, and middle linebacker Barrett Ruud again led the team in tackles with 142, with 107 solo. Ruud hasn't created many turnovers so far in his career, but he's a high-volume tackler, and those guys typically finish near the top of IDP scoring leaders. Linebacker Geno Hayes had 98 tackles in 09, and so he could sneak into fantasy lineups during bye weeks, and so could safeties Tenard Jackson with 71 tackles and Sean Jones with 61. But Ruud is the only member of the Tampa defense who needs to be drafted in most IDP formats. The Bucs team defense didn't get a single top 15 vote from any of the Yahoo analysts, despite the upgrades. Bottom line, there will be thousands of fantasy leagues in which no Bucs are owned on September 12th when Tampa season kicks off against Cleveland. That's the formula for ranking number 32nd in the Juggernaut Index. If you think we've ranked Tampa Bay unfairly, however, by all means, give your best counter-argument in the comments below. Otherwise, tell us where you were when Michael Spurlock made a little history.